In Episode 1, titled Decode the SSCP Exam Landscape and Requirements, we start by orienting ourselves to what this credential represents and how its exam process actually works for a working security professional. The Systems Security Certified Practitioner, spelled SSCP on first mention, is positioned as a practitioner's credential, which means the exam expects applied judgment across common, real-world control areas instead of abstract trivia. That practical stance shapes everything from the domain coverage to the way items are written and scored, and it is why planning, not cramming, is the smarter path. Our goal here is to map the terrain clearly, set accurate expectations, and give you a structure that keeps preparation efficient, calm, and repeatable when the calendar gets busy. A good starting point is the domain model because it tells you what matters most and where your study time buys the greatest return. The exam's body of knowledge is organized into named domains that collectively cover implementation, monitoring, and operations across the typical enterprise environment. Each domain carries a weighting percentage, and that weighting is the silent lever you use to aim your hours. Treat the weight not as permission to ignore anything, but as a signal for proportional practice. The heaviest domains earn more reading time, more scenario drills, and more postmortems after you take practice sets. This is the difference between busy study and targeted study that steadily reduces uncertainty. Eligibility, experience, and endorsement form the next pillar, and they deserve a calm, factual read-through before you book anything. The Systems Security Certified Practitioner requires a baseline amount of paid, relevant experience across one or more of the exam domains, with defined pathways for candidates who are still building that experience. Many professionals qualify through current or prior roles that involved securing systems, administering platforms, or operating controls, while others enter as associate candidates and complete the practice requirement after passing. After the exam, an endorsement step verifies your experience and professional standing, typically through a credentialed sponsor and simple documentation. Nothing here is meant to be mysterious. It is a gate to ensure the letters reflect applied skill, and it is easiest when you gather your dates, responsibilities, and references early. Registration and scheduling are operational tasks, but they shape your mental runway more than you might think. You will create an exam account, select a delivery option, and choose a window that aligns with your real commitments, not your ideal week that never arrives. Lead times vary by region, season, and delivery mode, so look at available seats across a 2 to 4 week span and give yourself a firm target date. From there, backward plan practice sets, domain reviews, and rest days so that the final week is review and confidence building, not a desperate scramble. A realistic schedule reduces stress, and lower stress improves recall and judgment on test day. Identification and agreements are straightforward, yet they are a frequent source of avoidable friction. The name on your government-issued identification must match the name on your exam registration down to the spacing and punctuation, and a mismatch that seems trivial on a resume can stop you at the door. Expect to review and accept candidate agreements that cover privacy, exam security, and code of conduct obligations. And expect the test provider to use digital signatures, photographs, and sometimes biometrics to maintain exam integrity. Treat these not as hurdles, but as quality controls that protect the value of the credential you are earning. Verify your name exactly, bring valid identification, and be prepared to acknowledge the rules with a clear head. The exam structure rewards time awareness and steady pacing, which means you should know its bones even if you choose not to memorize exact counts. You will face a fixed time window, a predetermined number of scored items, and often some experimental items that do not count but are indistinguishable from the rest. Scoring is typically reported on a scaled basis, which normalizes difficulty across forms and prevents overfitting to a single blueprint version. The implication for you is simple and humane. Answer every item you can with measured confidence, mark candidates for review when useful, and make one clean pass before you spend energy on knots. A few evenly paced minutes saved early can rescue a tough item at the end. Permitted items, prohibited materials, and breaks vary by test center and policy cycle, but the spirit is consistent. Preserve fairness and limit distractions. You should expect that personal electronics, notes, and wearables are not allowed in the testing room, that lockers are typically provided, and that food and drink rules are narrow. Foam earplugs are often acceptable and sometimes supplied, but noise-canceling devices are not. Breaks may be scheduled or on demand, and they may or may not stop the clock, so plan hydration and rest accordingly. Professionals who preview these rules find test day feels procedural rather than punitive, and that calm translates into steadier answers. Test day logistics sound mundane until a small misstep turns into a cascading delay, so rehearse the simple things. Drive the route or check transit the week before, identify parking or drop-off spots, and know which entrance the testing center uses in that particular building. Aim to arrive early enough to absorb traffic surprises without spiking your heart rate, and give yourself a buffer for check-in procedures that include identity verification and secure storage of your belongings. If you are traveling from out of town, treat the day before as light and predictable, not ambitious and tiring. A predictable morning is a quiet, competitive advantage. Online proctoring adds flexibility, but it replaces the test center's controlled environment with your own, and that changes the preparation checklist. Expect a system check that validates your device, bandwidth, camera, and microphone, and expect a room scan that requires a clear desk, covered notes, and no unapproved devices within reach. Secondary monitors should be powered off and disconnected, reflective surfaces can prompt extra checks, and background noise may draw attention. The proctor's role is to maintain integrity, not to rattle you, so approach the interaction like a professional. Verify identity promptly, follow directions, and keep the workspace simple. Many candidates find that a clean, staged desk reduces cognitive load and improves focus for the full sitting. Non-disclosure, integrity, and candidate conduct are not just legal lines. They are the social contract that keeps the credential meaningful. You will agree not to disclose exam content, not to solicit it, and not to attempt to gain unfair advantage before, during, or after the session. Violations can result in score cancellation, credential revocation, and membership consequences, which is more than enough reason to play a clean game. More importantly, ethical conduct protects your reputation in a field that runs on trust. Treat the rules the way you treat security policies at work, as boundary conditions that keep a system reliable for everyone who depends on it. Retake policies are safety nets, not strategies, but wise planners understand them before they need them. There is typically a defined waiting period between attempts and a limit to how often you can sit within a given window, and fees apply each time. Build a decision tree before the exam. If you pass, execute your endorsement and maintenance plan. If you fall short, convert the score report into a targeted remediation map and schedule the next attempt only after addressing the gaps. This kind of pre-commitment prevents emotional decisions in the 24 hours after a tough sitting and keeps momentum tied to evidence, not to mood. A credential is not just a pass result. It is a commitment to keep skills current, and that is where continuing education and maintenance come in. Expect a yearly cadence of professional education credits known as continuing professional education and an annual maintenance fee that sustains the body administering the certification. Credits can come from structured training, conferences, substantial self-study, or meaningful contributions to the community, provided they align with the domains and follow the documentation rules. The easiest path is to capture learning as you go. Notes, dates, hours, and outcomes, so that year-end reporting is clerical, not forensic. Think of maintenance as your rhythm for staying relevant rather than as an administrative chore. Before test day, translate all of this into a personal readiness checklist that you can read aloud without stumbling. Start by confirming your eligibility evidence, your exact name as it appears on your identification, and your endorsement plan so nothing is left hanging. Confirm the delivery mode, the time slot, and the route or system setup, and rehearse your pacing plan so it feels familiar, not theoretical. Last, capture your break approach, your hydration and nutrition choices, and your plan for the final week's review. When a checklist fits on one page and speaks your language, it is more likely to be used. And used checklists are the difference between hoping and being ready. It is worth setting expectations about item style so you do not read too fast or too nervously. Practitioner-level questions often describe a small scenario, then ask for the best next action, the most appropriate control, or the clearest explanation of a behavior you would actually see in the field. The trick is to anchor your decision in context, not in isolated definitions, and to eliminate distractors that are correct in theory but mismatched to the constraints cited. Practice by explaining why the wrong options are wrong in that specific moment, because that's exactly what sharpens the judgment you need under time pressure. With repetition, the patterns become familiar and your pace stabilizes. Pacing itself is a skill you can practice, and should, because time pressure erodes accuracy if left unmanaged. Calibrate a first pass that answers everything you can solve within a reasonable threshold. Mark items that deserve a slower reread and keep the train moving. Protect the final 10 minutes to clean up marked items, check for skipped responses, and reevaluate a small handful of borderline calls with fresh eyes. If you hear your internal voice accelerating, pause for a single deep breath and reset to your practiced cadence. Calm is a study habit long before it is a test day advantage. After you book the exam, commit to a light but consistent weekly rhythm that touches every domain and keeps your confidence growing. One sensible pattern is a domain emphasis for the week, daily microsets that mix domains to maintain retrieval agility, and a brief reflection log that turns misses into teachable notes. Aim for clarity over volume. If a concept remains fuzzy, downgrade speed and rebuild the foundation with a short scenario in your own words. Professionals learn fastest when they connect ideas to evidence they recognize from real environments. So bring your lived experience to the review table. That habit turns study time into professional development rather than isolated memorization. Finally, treat the exam as one part of a broader professional arc that includes ethics, community, and craft. An honest, measured preparation plan models the same discipline you will apply to control implementation, incident handling, and risk discussions at work. When the score arrives, acknowledge it, make your next move, and return to building systems that are safer and easier to run. Certifications open doors, but sustained practice keeps them open. That is the quiet promise of a practitioner credential. To close the loop, Episode 1 mapped the SSCP landscape from domains and eligibility through scheduling, identity checks, conduct, retakes, and maintenance, all the way to a one-page readiness checklist you can actually use. The immediate step is simple and concrete. Draft your eligibility checklist with dates, roles, and references so the endorsement path is frictionless when you pass. Then set a realistic target date and construct a weekly cadence that respects the domain weightings and your life. When preparation is deliberate and humane, the exam becomes a milestone in a longer, steadier journey rather than a cliff to scale overnight. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.